Thank you, Representative Cowan. It is such a pleasure to see Jean. When I became a candidate for House District 9, and I'm going to move over here so that post is kind of in the way. Can everybody see all right? I'm trying to dodge the post. How's this? All right, and let me know if this is too loud or too soft, please. When I first decided to throw my hat in the ring for the House District 9 race, redistricting had occurred, and when I realized that House District 9 goes from the southern edge of the city limits of Coos Bay to the Charleston Bridge, to the northern edge of the city of Yachats. So you are at the very northern edge of House District 9. The district then goes on into the valley. I have 5 voters registered in Elmira. I have, of course, Florence, Reedsport, Coos Bay, North Bend, Mapleton, Deadwood, Swiss Home, Cheshire, and I have up the Umpqua, Scottsburg, but not Wells Creek, for those of you who travel on that highway now and then. So that kind of gives you the boundaries. I go up the coast and then it's an L-shaped district. And when I first threw my hat in the ring, I had the great pleasure of meeting Representative Cowan. And she was very kind in advising me about the issues that faced what was part of her district and was going to become part of mine. And I'm just very grateful for her tutelage when I was a brand new candidate, meeting with my constituents in Florence and Yachats. And my first day door knocking in my campaign was a house out at the end of the street here, out on the bluff. And every campaign to date, I've come out and knocked on that door first every single time. So I always come up to Yachats to start my campaign. And I'm very proud to be here. I was born and raised in Coos Bay. I'm a native Coos Bay, Coos County girl. My great-grandparents immigrated from Sweden at the turn of the last century. When you have 7 kids on the farm, only 1 gets to stay and everybody else has to leave. So they came to the United States. And I have a long history back in my home of Coos Bay. My community service started long ago when I was a new mom and had kids starting elementary school, and I ended up being a crossing guard, which parlayed itself into running the school carnival, and all of a sudden you're on the school board, right? And so I was on the Coos Bay School Board for about 11 years. I was actually the chair of the school board when Senator Roland was the principal at the high school. So we go way back and have been collaborating for a very long time on issues. In 2003, I got a call from Governor Kulongoski, and he asked if I would accept a commission appointment to the Port of Coos Bay. So that's where the knowledge base that I have around transportation issues comes from. I also spent 8 years working for the Oregon Student Assistance Commission. We piloted a program when Arnie was at the high school and I was the school board chair, called Aspire, and it brought adult volunteers into the school to assist the counseling staff in making sure that parents and students were very well educated on planning post-high school, whether it was apprenticeship or community college or four-year college, in-state, out-of-state, public, private. How do you seek funding? What's a FAFSA? How do you apply for scholarship? And as a volunteer in that program, I got so excited about the work we were doing that when they were expanding the program, I went to work for them. And for 8 years, grew that program from 12 high schools to 125. It ended up with state funding and being incorporated into the work of the Oregon Student Assistance Commission. So I worked in all of the high schools along the coast, including Walport, Newport, Florence, Reedsport, North Bend, and Coos Bay. So I've trained adult volunteers in all of these communities and worked with all of your high school kids on their post-secondary planning. I also spent 8 years on the board of directors of an organization in Portland called the Energy Trust. Is anybody familiar with the work that the Energy Trust does? Well, when you pay your power bill, if you're Pacific Power, PGE, Northwest Natural Gas, Avista, Cascade Gas, you pay a public purpose charge. And it's about incentivizing energy efficiency, the generation of renewable power, and it's a very large organization that is moving Oregon forward, and we're on the forefront of investing in those areas. So I was pleased to represent rural communities up in Portland once a month working on energy issues. I was elected my first term into the 2012 election cycle. I've served 2 terms. I'm running for my 3rd term now. And it seems like it was 10 years ago, Jean, but it was actually 4, because you learn so much, and so much happens, and so much changes over the time that you serve. But I truly am honored to serve this district. I'm honored to serve Yachats and the people on the coast that I'm so proud to represent. This term, I have been privileged to sit on the Committee for Higher Education, Innovation, and Workforce Development because of my work in access to higher ed. The speaker has given me the great good fortune of sitting on the Ag and Natural Resources Committee. I represent fishermen, shellfish producers, agricultural communities. I'm an old ag major from Oregon State, so that's like a home for me in that committee. And I'm very privileged to chair the Transportation Committee in the Oregon House of Representatives. And during the last short session, after we finished the last short session in May, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President came together to form a joint committee on transportation, preservation, and modernization of our transportation system. And I'm proud to have been selected to co-chair that committee along with Senator Lee Byer, who hails from the Springfield area. So we chair a committee of 14 legislators that are bipartisan, bicameral, geographically very diverse around the state, who are charged with developing the transportation package that will be coming in the 2017 session. In fact, that's why I was in Salem today having a meeting with the Oregon Transportation Commission as we begin to plan for how we're going to invest in the infrastructure that our parents and grandparents built that we have a responsibility to maintain and preserve. So I'm very involved right now in the crafting of that transportation package, which will be a bill that will come in the 17th session. So I think that kind of hits the highlights.
I think we could move to a few questions.
Sure.
If anybody has some pressing questions while we've got the representative here. Yes, sir.
I realize this is a little awkward because your opponent is not here tonight to respond, but from your point of view, if there were one issue in this election which differentiates you from your opponent, what would you say that it was?
Wow. That's a very good question. Oh, we have a tracker here tonight.
Right.
And what's your name?
Nikki.
Nikki? Sorry,
Yes.
okay.
Sorry.
Nikki's here tracking me tonight, so my opponent has sent someone to tape this evening. And Nikki, I think you were at the meeting up in Hillsborough, is that correct? Were you at another meeting that I attended?
I might have been.
Okay,
I don't know.
I just wanted you all to know that she's here, and this is the purpose for which she has come. So she is taping this on behalf of my opponent. To differentiate us, I think the most stark contrast would be that my opponents moved here from Arizona about a year ago, and I've been here for 64 years. And I've been engaged in my community as a volunteer, as an elected official since 1989, as a governor's appointment since 2002, and I've been on the boards of a number of private nonprofits over the course of my service as the president of an organization that runs a municipal pool. I spent 15 years on the board of a private nonprofit that runs a residential treatment facility for remanded youth called the Bologna Ranch. I've been a volunteer with the Oregon Community Foundation evaluating grants up and down the coast for a number of years. I've done a great deal of work with the Ford Family Foundation as a scholarship. I evaluate scholarship applications for the Ford Family Foundation, and I also now am an interviewer for the Ford Scholars Program. And I helped form the scholarship committee at my local high school, which started out with $0. Now is over $2 million in assets, because getting kids to college is something I care deeply about. So I think the contrast is that I've been here for a long time. I have a deep, rich history and a great deal of experience in local, not only private nonprofits, but in local elected entities. And I've been in the House of Representatives for 4 years. So I think that's probably the most stark contrast that I can draw.
like to encourage you to keep your questions to not a comparison between the candidates, because we don't have two candidates here this evening. It's on this gentleman's hand, and then the lady right here. I'm sorry, I don't ever know everyone's name.
Yes, sir.
I want to direct this way so they can hear me and
Oh,
you can still hear me.
please.
Oh,
How
okay.
would that?
I would like to know your positions.
A little closer to your mouth.
Closer.
Perfect.
I'd like to know your position on what I think are perhaps the two most important issues that are happening right now. The first one is climate change, the other one is Citizens United. And then my other question is, could you explain your and Arnie Robland's vote in favor of Monsanto's interest?
I would like the candidate not to speak to Senator Rowland's vote. I'd
Okay,
like her
well,
to stick
you're-
to her
you're all
own
done.
views
Yeah.
and keep it fairly succinct.
Thanks.
And I just want to, do you have a bill number? Is this a bill that came a couple of sessions ago?
I believe so, yeah.
I think I know what you're
Yeah.
referring to.
It had to do with counties trying to pass laws to
Senate Bill
regulate-
833.
Regulate, yeah. GMO.
Senate Bill 833, yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to address that bill. I know there is a great deal of interest in that issue. And I had lots of conversations with many of my constituents while that bill was in process. And and I'm not going to speak for Arnie.
No, please
Yeah,
don't.
that's very inappropriate. I sit on Ag and Natural Resources, so that bill came through our committee. And I am a former agriculture major. And so I was very intrigued by what was trying to be done there. And when the bill came, there was a lot of information that came to us about the difficulty of drawing boundaries around counties when farms don't necessarily stop at the county line. We had a lot of farmers who had grave concern about counties being able to opt into something that was, I guess, I'm trying to think of the term that was used by the farming community that came forward. We ended up with farmers fighting farmers on that issue. And it became very problematic in the Willamette Valley. There's a process that they use in the Willamette Valley for grass seed growers and brassica growers. It's called a pinning system. And there are lots of farmers in the Willamette Valley who grow crops that can cross-pollinate, which can be devastating, whether they're GMO, non-GMO, whether they're two different types of brassicas, depending on what the characteristics are. And they have a system where all of the farmers come together 2 or 3 years in advance, and they agree to participate in this system. And I have a map in my office, actually, and they determine when they're going to plant, what they're going to grow, when they're going to pollinate, when they're going to harvest, what the distances are between each crop, and how far a distance they have to have no cross-pollination. And it works really, really well. It's an amazing collaboration between people who are very intelligent. Oregon State University scientists are involved in the development of this pinning system, and it works. Arbitrarily drawing a line around a county and saying you can't grow a crop here that somebody else may be growing to their great benefit that they are happy to do created some serious problems. So we had conversations about the possibility of the Rogue Valley using that pinning system. GMO labeling, I'm all for that. I think if you are interested, and consumers are, about what's in their food, and you want to know that there's a GMO ingredient in that, whatever it is, you should be able to know that. But labeling at the state level is incredibly problematic when goods cross state lines all the time. Federal level, GMO labeling, I'm all for it. Everybody use the same set of rules. Everybody gets to know what they're eating. Everybody gets to know what's in the product. But sometimes the jurisdiction in which you apply that law becomes problematic. So at the federal level, I think GMO labeling is great. At the state level, it doesn't work very well. When you start drawing arbitrary lines about where farmers can grow things, I think it's problematic. And the reason I didn't vote for the bill is I didn't think it was poorly designed. Now, Jackson County already had their measure there. It was exempted. But to have other counties begin to opt out just created a very serious logistical problem for lots and lots of farmers who have a right to farm.
Yeah.
That's why I voted against it.
Okay, there was a
Thank you.
question back here.
My question,
Let's let someone else get their question
my
answered.
question is, can you think of 2 or 3 things specifically that is important to Yahats that we need as a community that might have some overlap with what you're doing?
Can you repeat that?
Certainly, yes, absolutely. What she asked is, what 1 or 2 or 3 things that I work on impact people in Yahats that are important to you all? I'm going to give you 2 examples. I chair the Transportation Committee. Highway 101 runs right through the middle of Yahats. And the safety issues around Highway 126, the safety issues around Highway 20, which I just came over for the first time tonight since that's been reopened, are paramount to what you do every day in moving people and goods. I chair the Transportation Committee, the Joint Transportation Committee, that's going to be dealing with transit issues. With my first term, I put together a District 9-wide Transportation Committee that included people from Yahats, Florence, Reeds, Port Coos Bay. And the first thing that we identified was a gap in transit. You can get from Astoria to Yahats and you can't get from Yahats to Florence. Well, you will be able to in January. We're fixing that problem. We coordinated with the Lincoln County Transit and Lane Transit, and that's a gap we identified my first term. It's taken us a while, but we've gotten to the point where that's going to be addressed. As the chair of the Transportation Committee and the Joint Transportation Committee, these are things I care about that I can work on. We got a $7 million allocation out of the last session at the request of the senator and myself to do some safety issues, address some safety issues on 126. We had some devastating accidents on 126 heading up into the valley up around Mapleton a couple of years ago, and we were able to address those. So I think that would be one. I think the second thing that I think probably involves every citizen in House District 9 at some point, we've had some serious issues around the state on the regulatory structure around memory care facilities. And particularly down in the southern end of House District 9 and in other colleagues of mine's districts recently, we've had some serious issues around, what am I going to say? We're not doing a very good job with memory care. Now, assisted living facilities, nursing facilities have a much more robust regulatory structure. As memory care facilities begin to evolve, the acuity level is changing. We are aging. There are more of us, and I include me. I'll be Social Security on December 29th. In my district, I have constituents who are struggling mightily with this issue. So I brought a bill in the last session on behalf of a constituent to change the regulatory structure, look at around memory care. I brought a task force bill. Task force bills are difficult. They cost money. I wasn't able to succeed with that, but I kept moving with a work group. And the work group included representatives from DHS who regulate memory care, the stakeholders from the Alzheimer's Association, AARP, the Ombudsman's Group, which inspects these on our behalf as a neutral party. We had 2 senators and 3 representatives at the table, and the association that represents the companies that manage memory care facilities. We found out some amazing, stark things. We found out that if you don't have a staffing level that's appropriate in a nursing facility, you get a fine. You get a fine that's about equal to the cost of what it had to have somebody on that shift. As you accrue those fines at the end of the year, they can total $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. We cap them at $7,500. What's the incentive to make sure that we are appropriately staffing the places that take care of our most vulnerable? Memory care has no staffing levels. And the training level is very ambiguous for memory care. Who are our most vulnerable people? Our children and our fragile adults, our seniors. We're not doing a good job. So my work group has continued to work with the help of a member of the governor's staff, a member of the speaker's staff, And we are moving forward with the formation this fall with a purple ribbon panel that's going to bring in the scientists that deal with issues around dementia and memory care. And we're going to keep pushing on this issue. And DHS has brought a draft bill that we're hoping that the governor will keep moving forward, that's actually addressing all of the issues that we brought up in our original task force bill and are talking about in our work group that we think are really, really important as we move into the next phase of how we take care of our seniors.
Representative, you're on my favorite subject, but I'm gonna move on to the next.
You and I need to talk, Representative.
Long-term care was my issue while I was
Oh,
there.
yeah.
This lady right here had a
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
Hi there, my name's Barbara Fry, I'm a member of the Yachts City Council.
We've met, yeah.
Last session, I guess it was, your vote on gun background checks
Yes,
was really distressing to me.
yes.
And I'd like to hear about why you took that vote, and what you plan to do about guns.
I'm happy to talk about that. That's a really hard issue for me too. There are probably, we have probably 4,000 to 5,000 bills that are drafted every session. And every session, it takes an awful lot to get a bill passed. We actually probably vote on 700 or 800 bills of the 4,000 or 5,000 that are drafted. And there are probably 2 or 3 that keep you up at night. Most bills are easy to discern. You use your good judgment. The pathway is clear. You take your vote and you move on. And one was for Mr. Niskanen, one of your city employees. We actually got his bill passed. The gun bill is one that I was sleepless for weeks about. It was very difficult for me. I grew up in Coos County. I've been a hunter all my life. My freezer's full of elk meat that I bagged. I mean, this just is what I know. And I'm a very responsible gun owner. When that bill came, what I struggled with were some of the details about it. I think there were some very specific things that I wanted amended, and I was not able to get them amended. And I voted no on the bill. And it had to do with me not being able to loan a weapon to a friend of mine who wants to go take it down to some other state or to a different country and go hunt for a few weeks. We made it very onerous to do some things that should not be onerous. Now, I will first of all say, we have a problem with gun violence. I absolutely own it, agree with it, yes, it's true. In my first session, we actually advocated for $28 million to go into community mental health. We don't do a very good job dealing with mental health, and we need to. We have to deal with that issue when it comes to the relationship between mental health and gun violence. We have things that have happened close to home that are just devastating. I clearly understand that. But the way that particular bill was drafted, the background check piece was fine, but they were missing a piece on how you actually have an opportunity to share if you want to. And I took issue with that. And I wish I had been able to amend that bill. Now, I did bring another bill in my first session that I'm thinking about resurrecting, and it has to do with gun safety as well. Shimia Fagan, who is my colleague from up in the East Portland area, and I chief co-sponsored a bill that would have provided a tax incentive or a tax break for a family who had children in a home, who had guns in the home that they needed to secure, and securing guns is incredibly important. How you manage your weapons is critically important to buy gun safe. And we brought the bill, we got it quite a ways through the process till it hit Ways and Means. And I'm sorry to say that they put a very large fiscal on it. I thought it was too big. I thought it should have been lower. And it failed because it was a constrained budget environment. We weren't able to pass it.
So do you have a plan for?
I think we're gonna need to cut it off with respect for our citizens that want to talk about city issues. Your time is up.
I understand.
And I will give you a minute or so to give us a wrap up.
Oh, I'm happy
Really
to.
appreciate you coming.
I'm happy to. I think I'll just wrap it up by saying, when I was a crossing guard at Blossom Gulch School back in like 1986, I never dreamed of doing anything like this. I didn't aspire to be a state representative. Things evolve over time, and I think one thing that I've learned is that the coast of Oregon is an incredibly unique place. And I really am honored to serve every single one of you. And I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, a working family, whatever party or non-affiliation you choose. I have 65,000 people that I represent, and my door is always open. I have incredible staff. This is Malia Masiba, my chief of staff. And we will be hiring one more staff for this session. But I'm one of those legislators who has an open door policy. I invite you to call. I invite you to come see me. I get up here regularly, and I'm honored to do so. I've worked very closely with your city on a number of issues, and will continue to do so. I truly consider this an honor, and I would love to go back for another term. And I'm hoping that I can interact with you more. I have to tell you something, and as I finish this up, and I told Jean as I came in, I've lived in Coos Bay all my life, and I know a lot of folks down there, and I've worked in Florence, and I've worked in Reedsport, but when I do a town hall or an event like this in Yachats, I always get this type of a group. When I do a town hall in Coos Bay, I get 10 people. And I have to compliment you on, you are the most civically engaged community. It's something you should be incredibly proud of,
We are.
because it serves you very, very well. Hold our feet to the fire. Talk to us when you need something. Let us know what you're thinking, because that's how we can do our jobs better. And I really appreciate you coming out tonight. And I'm going to make a run for Coos Bay. I don't know if I'm going to drive or swim, but I'm going to give it a shot.